very challenging and difficult to always be present and take advantage of opportunities that come throughout our life at every given moment. We know, Abotai, that opportunities, like many things in our life, are just chances for us to act upon them and to bring something within our life, or something that came and passed and nearly brought no effect within our day-to-day living. So we always try to look at our life, to look at the period of the year, to look what's happening around us, and to try to gather some sort of inspiration and guidance of not only how we can get through a period of time, but well prepare ourselves for any opportunity that may come up. So now, Abotai, in the last few weeks, the last few months, you could even call it, I've been talking to many people, and there is a clear energy that is in the air. A clear change of the state of the world from when it was only from the beginning of the year to this given point. We see, Abotai, in almost every single individual that comes to see us, like a challenge that he is going through, a moment of hardship, something that he is overcoming. And it's something that I see that almost nobody escaped from. Whether it's people that are doing it in the jewelry, people that are doing food, people that are doing real estate, any industry, no matter what you are doing in your life, somehow, for some reason, there is many challenges that we see that are just coming to fruition without even understanding why, without even reason why. It's like we spoke 2 days ago to a dentist. And this dentist, he said, Rav, everything is so slow. And I thought to myself, how is it possible that the dentist is saying that things are slow? Teeth are supposed to be something that, regardless of what's happening in the world, people continue to function. But still we see that there is big change in the world, and it's a time of challenge. So the question that I had to myself is, what is the reason of all this challenge? And is there any meaning behind it that we are supposed to understand? And the answer that we've been teaching, and the answer that we've been explaining to everybody, that it's not something specific to any individual, but rather the year that we are present in. What does that mean? We know, Abotai, we read only 2 weeks ago in the Torah that there is a year that we call Shnat Shmita. What does Shnat Shmita mean? The 7th year. We're in the Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on Har Sinai, on the giving of the Torah, or in other words, Shavuot, took Bnei Israel and taught them a rule, a law of eternity. Which is what? 6 years you will have blessing. When the 7th year will come, stop all work. What was the purpose of this mitzvah? Chazal explained. It was in order for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be able to bless Bnei Israel for the 6 years. So every single year of Shemitah, there was always a challenge of Parnassah, or a challenging time in the world. And there will always be a challenging time in the world. Being that it's a time, like what the Zohar HaKadosh says, not only that we don't work our fields, or we don't put too much work into our world, but rather it's a time where the king conquers the world. In what manner? Zohar HaKadosh says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at his world and tells the world, I want everything back. Where the king wants all his fields back, he wants all his wealth back, he wants all his jewelry back, he wants everything back. And after he's taken everything, he's able to do what? To redistribute. The Zohar HaKadosh says that's what the year of Shemitah is. In its essence, it's a year where the king conquers the world. It doesn't matter if you're in Eretz Israel, doesn't matter if you're in Miami, doesn't matter if you're in Los Angeles, doesn't matter anywhere you are in the world. It's a nature of the year in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants everything back. Now, if you go back in history, you see that every year of Shemitah, there is always this challenge that comes to fruition. 2014 was somewhat of a challenging year. Before that, you had 2007. Before that, you had the 9/11 year, which Hashem Yerachem. Every year of Shemitah, for as far as we can count in our history, there has been a year of challenge. And what we tell everybody is that being that it's a year that the king conquers the world, there are 2 ways that the king can conquer. There is one way where we can all fight and give the king a hard time. But if it's a big king, he won't give up, and eventually he'll get his way. And when he gets his way, that person that fought will be bloody. Or we surrender and we say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's your land, it's your world. I'm not going to try to seize control. You are in control, Zehu. And then the king comes along, conquers the land. He sees that you're able to take care of that land, or you're worthy of receiving that land. He will give it back, and maybe he will even give more with it. Shnat Shemitah is a year in which we have the potential to not only pass through a hard time if we act properly, but also bring within our own life an abundance for the upcoming 6 years. Because like we mentioned, Kadosh Baruch Hu in Shnat Shemitah redistributes. So regardless of what challenges we are going throughout our life right now in the last few months, and hopefully it will be less till Rosh Hashanah, we have to remember, they are not challenges that are specific to us, but rather something that the whole world is going through. It's in the nature, it's in the pattern of the year, it's in the energy of the world. Nobody can escape it. But Abatai, thinking of this, we came up with a question. And I would really like that we all, B'ezrat Hashem, leave this class with more of an understanding of this year and some sort of a way of overcoming it. We're thinking to ourselves that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wrote in the Torah that Shnat Shemitah always had a reason. And like we mentioned, that reason was in order to redistribute, to give more to his loyal servants and to take away from those who don't deserve it. But the question that we had is, how come HaKadosh Baruch Hu needed to go through this pattern of having 1 year of judgment in order to bring 6 years of blessing? Why couldn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu just give 6 years of blessing or 7 years of blessing to those who deserve it? And those who don't deserve it, they don't deserve it. But why put the entire world into this aspect of judgment and panic and stress and hardship in order to bless? Because in the end of the day, according to what the Torah explains to us, the whole idea of Shemitah is not to punish anybody, but rather to be able to give more for 6 years that follow. So why do 6 years of blessing come in the form and shape that seems to be 1 year of judgment to bring blessing? Why couldn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu just start off by giving 7 years of blessing to those who deserve it, and for those who don't deserve it, that's what Rosh Hashanah is for. So what is the purpose of this idea of even having 1 year of judgment, hardship, to bring 6 years of blessing? So while we were thinking about this, we noticed that this is not just a pattern for Shnat Shemitah, but rather a pattern throughout the entire Torah Kula. We see that in B'ezrat Hashem just a few days, we're going to celebrate what holiday? Who can tell us? Shavuot. Shavuot was the holiday that we received the Torah. We received our souls. We received our crown of being the sons of the King, sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shavuot is a holiday of complete compassion, love, and gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to hand us. But we see something very interesting at the time when Hashem was granting us this gift. The Torah says that Hashem, before he brought down the Torah, he gathered Bnei Yisrael around the mountain, and the first thing that he did, he set the mountain on fire. Bnei Yisrael sees this. They understood that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a big God, something that is worthy of awe. But it doesn't stop there. The Torah says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu threatens Bnei Yisrael. You touch the mountain, you die. Then the Torah says that there was barakim, there was barakim, thunder and hail, and Bnei Yisrael even died from fear, and they came back to life from the sight of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was putting in place. We thought to ourselves, what's the purpose of all this show? What was the purpose of creating this image of like fear and stress and something very, very scary in order to, the bottom line, give a gift? It wasn't any form of judgment or punishment, because clearly at the end of all this scary scene was a big gift, which was a Torah Kedusha. So we see the same pattern of judgment that comes before every gift. Why so? We saw that in last week's parasha as well. We read, Im bechokotai telechu. Who can finish? Vet mitzvotai tishmoru. if you follow my laws, which are judgment, and you keep my chukim, which are like laws, only then I will bless you with rain at the right time, which is like parnasah. I will bless you with abundance, with happiness, with success, with all the good things. This pattern of judgment that always comes before kindness. What is the purpose behind it? What can we learn from it? And how can we overcome it and come to a place of big Yeshua? And that's what I would like to try to understand. When thinking of this idea, we found a question in the Zohar that maybe can give us a little bit of an insight of understanding this idea of always bringing judgment and kindness in packages, like in sets, in teams, never just times of chesed purely. So there's a question that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai asked in the Zohar Kadosh that I think can give us a little bit of a direction. As we know about time, our shape of our bodies was not a shape that just came out of nowhere. Kadosh Baruch Hu designed us from where? From Himself. And we say, Adam nivra b'tzelem Eloki. We were born in the shape and in the image of God. Our shape and our image has a lot of importance of even looking into how HaKadosh Baruch Hu functions. And that's what the Zohar HaKadosh really broke in pieces. The 10 attributes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu built off our own bodies. Whereas we know there's this idea that we're not going to get into deep of the 10 sfirot, or in other words, 10 attributes. And these 10 attributes are HaKadosh Baruch Hu's way of leading Himself. And in this shape and in this image, we were copied. So just to get it in very, very short, we have Chabad, Chokhmah, Bina, Dat in our head, which is consciousness. And that's where the name Chabad comes from, which is essentially the consciousness of Hashem, Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat. If you ask why there are multiple midot for consciousness, your consciousness has love, has technicality, it has many different things that are very, very polar opposite, that even in today's day, we separated it between heart and brain. We say, my heart is telling me this, and my brain is telling me this. No thoughts come from the heart. But in our own mind, we're able to have some sort of understanding that even our own consciousness is split to multiple pieces. Chabad, Chokhmah, Bina, Dat. Chesed, right hand. Gvura, strength, left hand. Tiferet, chest, gut, stomach, heart, etc. Netzach, right leg. Hod, left leg. Yesod is the berit. And Malchut, kingdomship, is the entire body when it's together. Zohar Kadosh says, even though there are multiple midot, multiple attributes, Hashem doesn't act in all those attributes. In what sense? In the sense that there are 2 attributes in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu leads Himself and the world at almost every given time. And it makes sense which ones they are. They are Chesed and Gvura. Chesed being kindness, love, compassion, wanting to give gifts, goodness. Gvura being strength, love, judgment, resilience, things that are more tough, things that are more, you could even call it potential to be negative. Potential. Zohar Kadosh says, and before we can get to that makes very clear sense why it's our hands. Because in our day-to-day life, we bring to fruition what our minds want, not through our legs, but rather through our hands. So Chesed and Gvura only makes sense that it would be the main 2 attributes in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu leads the world. Zohar Kadosh says, and he asks, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu was using 2 attributes, and only 2, which would act as His hands in the world, in which He changes things, in which He moves things around, why would He choose such polar opposite attributes? Why would He choose one that represents the most loving, soft thing that can possibly be, where if you were to compare it to a color, it would be white, and the second one, if you compare it to a color, it would be red, like blood, judgment, hardship. They seem to be polar opposites. Why didn't He use more common and more compatible attributes to be the hands in which He conducts all His changes in the world? Why 2 opposite attributes that act as one, or together at least? And the Zohar Kadosh actually answers this way with a beautiful answer that really gives us a lot of clarity within our life. The Zohar Kadosh says in reality, the two midot, the two attributes in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu conducts his business, is actually not two attributes at all. But rather what? But rather one. Which attribute? Chesed. So what is Gvura? So what is the left side? What is the left hand? Zohar Kadosh says it's simple. It's not an attribute of its own, but rather a helper, an aid for Midat HaChesed, for the Chesed, for the goodness. Where the judgment and the strength and all the things that seem to be more negative are not even an attribute of their own, but rather some sort of helper, partner, or like in the word of the Zohar Kadosh, keli, a vessel in which the Chesed can be protected and in which the Chesed could exist as Chesed. So the question is, how does this make sense? So the Zohar Kadosh brings an analogy that we can truly take and understand this idea. It's like when we approach a palace. When you approach the palace, the first thing you see is what? Guards, and gates, and medals, and weapons. And the guards that stand on these gates are not going to be simple guards, but rather they're going to be what? The strongest soldiers that the king have, the most efficient killers that the king have. They stand on the gates, and they are the first thing that every person that sees the king's palace visualizes. When you see that, the first thing that comes to your heart is Hashem Yirachem. This king, it looks like all judgment, it looks like all din. But if you pass those gates, and you pass those guards, you find yourself in a place where you've never felt safer. You never felt more opportunity for compassion. You never felt more opportunity for good things to just lay around and not get ruined or stolen or harmed. You find yourself in a place that exists an energy and an environment that is most suitable for the best things in the world to exist, and nothing would bother them. Zohar Kadosh says that in essence is what is the relationship between chesed, the right, kindness, and judgment, gvura. Being that judgment is not even an attribute of its own, but rather the gates, the guards, the swords, the medals that the king puts in order to keep his family safe, in order to keep a place in which is protected from all negative that can possibly exist, and allow true mercy and love and goodness to exist unharmed. The Zohar Kadosh says, Gvura, judgment, suffering you can call it, or all these negative things that can possibly associate, are not attributes, but rather what? Rather preparation. The king doesn't want to have murderers and soldiers with guards and guns and knives around him. But he understands that without those layers of medals and guards and judgment, his kindness could not exist. His goodness will not be able to exist. That is the secret between chesed, kindness, and gvura, where they act as one team, where they act as one being the shell, the outside, and the other being what? The pnimiut, what exists inside, what the outside is working so hard to protect. Chesed being the inside, and gvura being the outside. Now this is something that we can see not only with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's attributes, even within our own life, either within ourselves. There's this idea of Ahavat Hashem, love of Hashem, and what? And fear of Hashem, Irat Shamayim. Chazal say bluntly, Ahavat Hashem, love of Hashem, could not exist if a person does not have what? Irat Shamayim. Where inside you have to feel love of Hashem, but outside what protects the love and what keeps the love alive is what? The fear. And in reality we could see that once we start to lose fear and awe, the love dwindles down too. So in reality what keeps the love intact and what keeps the love alive is what? It's these ideas of fear of Hashem. It's these ideas of boundary. It's this idea of laws. It's this idea of being strict. And without that, the strongest love that can possibly exist will dwindle down and get weakened and get lost even. We see this idea of judgment, toughness, darkness being always a preparation, a helper, and an aid to kindness. And without all those negative energies that exist, kindness and love and all the good things have no chance to even possibly exist. We can say it with one another. In Abotai, I always ask couples that want to come and see us, they're asking us if they're going to get, if they should get married or not. We tell them separate a little bit. And if you're separated a little bit, their answers will be clear. So the question is, why is that? The answer is simple. When there's a little bit separation, when there's a little bit judgment, or darkness, or hardship, what gets the chance to flourish, or to come to fruition, or to come to expression? Love. Whether or not you love them, whether or not you don't, how much you do, or chas v'shalom, how much you don't. So in reality, we find that even ahava, love, comes only to existence when there is distance, when there is darkness, when there is some sort of layer of like judgment that goes around. And only when there is that layer of judgment that goes around could love be created, could love exist, could love be sustained. And without that, even the best thing in the world will either get stolen, ruined, perished, or chas v'shalom, lose its goodness. And this is a rule in every single thing of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Judgment doesn't exist. Judgment is not an attribute of its own, but rather judgment is a preparation and aid to allow good things to flourish and to exist. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's acting in the world is never in a negative way, but rather always either a preparation, or if not a preparation, a way of us sustaining and maintaining the good that He gave us. And we can see this within HaKadosh Baruch Hu's leadership of the world. We know, Botai, there's one day in the year where we literally call it the Day of Judgment. What day is that? Who can tell us? Rosh Hashanah. We call it Yom Hadin. Ayom Marat HaOlam. Ayom Yamin Mishpat. Kol Yitzur HaOlam. Im Kebanim. Im Kema'avadim. Today is a day of judgment in which all creations get judged. But if we look in the parasha, in the pasuk, in the parasha, that actually talk about Rosh Hashanah, you see a little sweet secret that really reveals the essence behind the holiday. Torah says, "B'chodesh Shvi'i tik'u b'shofar b'kaseh liyom chagenu." What did that mean in translation? On the 7th month, which is Rosh Hashanah is really the 7th month. Questions we will get afterwards. I know we already have. Rosh Hashanah being the 7th month, you blow the shofar on the first day of the 7th month in the shell or in the covering of our holiday. That's literally the translation. So the question is, what was Hashem really asking from us? So if we were to try to understand it and explain it, Hashem told Bnei Israel, you blow the shofar on the 7th month, but the shofar represents fear, judgment. We say, Akitzu nirdamim, wake up from your sin, do tshuva, come close to Hashem. That's what the shofar was always meant for. So the shofar always represents this idea of what? Of reminding us, Hashem is right now actively evaluating us. A sound of like fear, a sound of awakeness. But the Torah says, Tik'u b'shofar, blow the shofar, b'kaseh leyom chagenu. Blow the shofar as a covering, as a shell, for what? For our holiday. Being that all the names and all the different things that we do on Rosh Hashanah that seem to say that it's a day of judgment, it's all just what? A shell, a covering. If you go past that covering, you find what? Yom Chagenu, it's just a holiday. Rather opposite, it's a holiday that we should celebrate with. It's a holiday that we are receiving so much more than Chas v'Shalom is being taken away. So even Rosh Hashanah, the day of Din, all the things that we call it as a day of Din is always what? Just a covering, just a protection. The gate around the palace. A gate that allows Yom Chagenu, the day of our holiday, to exist in its purity. Now this makes a lot of sense, and even why the sequence of Chagim. You would imagine that first Hashem forgives, then judges, right? You come to a king, you want him to forgive you, then to judge what is at that point. That's what at least makes sense. But we see in the holidays, it's quite opposite. First we have Yom Hadin, Rosh Hashanah, Day of Judgment, Day of an accounting. And only after Rosh Hashanah exists what?
Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur, a day of mercy. Yom Kippur, the day of forgiveness. A day of love. This idea that before every single gift, Hashem draws a gate, creates a fence. That fence to protect the purity of the gift that He wants to bring down to the world and not allow it perish or not allow it fall in value in our hearts and in our minds. So even throughout the holidays, we find that Yom Kippur is what? Is after Rosh Hashanah. It's the gift that is found beyond the soldier. It's a gift that is found beyond that layer of judgment that Hashem put in place. The same thing could be seen where? The same thing could be seen even with our world. We're going to go a little bit deep right now and we'll have questions afterwards. We know when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, He didn't create one world. He created four. Atzilut, Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. Right? The first three worlds are worlds of angels and neshamot and worlds of all different creation that can possibly exist. The fourth world is the world of what? Of us, Asiyah, Bnei Adam. But it's very interesting. We see that the first three worlds that were created work as what? As the back end. They work as how they act as how our world functions. Our neshamot comes from there. Our nefesh come from there. Our blessings come from there. Our mazal is written up there. We go there after 120 years. We even say that Baal Shem Tov said that every single leaf has an angel that comes from that world. So really, those three worlds that exist above are the inner workings of our world. But what's very interesting is that the Zohar HaKadosh says that those three worlds are worlds of what? Worlds of complete judgment. Worlds of complete strictness. And it's obvious. We know that angels don't have freedom of choice. We know that angels can't choose. They can't create. They're not really a creation of love and kindness. Quite opposite, they're a creation of complete judgment. But the answer to that, the reasoning behind that, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu understood that if He wants chesed to exist, if He wants a world of kindness to exist, what must exist first? A border, law, judgment, fear. And only once there is that border, wall, judgment, fear, could a world of chesed exist, period. We even see that with our own world. Whoever studied a little bit of Arizal knows that when Hashem created the world, at first, His idea was to create a world of judgment, base the world off judgment, scrapped that plan, and recreated it with kindness. So why would you create it in the beginning when He changed His mind? I didn't think Hashem was, how do you say, people that can't make decisions? Indecisive. Hashem couldn't make his mind if He wants chesed or if He wants gvura. Chas v'shalom. But rather He understood that every single gift that needs to be given always must come first a protection, a border, a gate. And when there is that border, that gate, that layer of quote-unquote din, judgment that exists, could then the sweetness of the kindness flourish and be what it is, pure kindness. And that is the essence of what occurred on Matan Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to bring the biggest gift that you can possibly imagine, our Torah, what makes us Jews. It's obvious that HaKadosh Baruch Hu needed to bring some sort of fear or judgment involved. The idea behind the entire scene that occurred on Matan Torah was always supposed to act like a gate. A gate in what? A gate, first of all, for the world. For the world to see Hashem's presence, to hear Hashem's voice, and as a result of that, cherish the Torah. Because love and cherishment and honor only come from what? From fear, from this gate. Only once there is the gate could good things exist in the middle. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought down the Torah, He wanted to create a gate for the whole world to see. To create a fear which would act like a vessel to receive kindness and love for the world, as well as for us, Bnei Israel. We mentioned that there is no love of Hashem without fear. Without Hashem putting awe within us, without Hashem taking us through like a moment of stress and fear at looking at the Torah, there would never be a strong love that would last forever. So from the beginning of time, when Hashem gave the Torah, His intentions were very clear. Put a show of judgment, pass the show, and then they'll be able to not only receive the gift, but keep it well and have it influence their life in the most positive way possible. So the question is, what happened? So what happened was something that is very simple. We know that Yetzer Hara is the best businessman that could exist. He is so smart. He's always that one that is first to every deal. He takes every opportunity, every upcoming or downfalling of a person, and he finds a way to turn it somehow to his agenda. Yetzer Hara is the most smart entity you can possibly imagine. Don't think that he is not smart. Yetzer Hara has found big opportunity when seeing that judgment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put on the mountain, that fear that He wanted to install within the world. What did He do? He came to Bnei Israel. He said, Bnei Israel, look, Moshe went to the sky, he left you. Hashem used to be present, He's trying to burn you. You're alone in the world right now. So why don't you get up, and now that you're alone in a world of judgment, find a new leader. Or in other words, what the Yetzer Hara did, he took Bnei Israel and he convinced them something that is completely false. He convinced them that judgment was not a preparation or a helper for chesed, but the judgment was what? A state of reality. And when Bnei Israel saw that, look, right now we are present in a time of judgment. Maybe Yetzer Hara is right. Maybe this is our world right now. Maybe this is the state of our life right now, where there is no Moshe, there is no Hashem, there is no a leader that would be able to guide us. Yetzer Hara took that preparation for a gift and convinced Bnei Israel that rather that this being something that needs to be overcome to see Moshe Rabbeinu and to receive a gift, rather that is the state of reality. Instead of Bnei Israel looking at this moment of time where Moshe is not present and Hashem is not present, and growing love like a person that doesn't see his friend, he misses the individual more. Instead of bringing love to fruition, more chesed into the world, Yetzer Hara was able to fool them. And Yetzer Hara was able to convince them that the state of judgment that they were passing is a state and an existence of its own. Where Gvura, judgment, is not a helper of chesed, but rather an entity that exists. Rather an attribute that exists. So instead of allowing Bnei Israel to overcome that time and to pass it, He convinced them that what? He convinced them, no. This is your world right now. This is where you stand right now. Now this is something, Abotai, that is not just a trick that Yetzer Hara won many years ago. This is a trick that we all fall to. And Yetzer Hara fights us in every single day, in every single opportunity, in every single chance. And it's very simple. We have sometimes people, they are going through a hardship of parnasa. So there are two ways to look at it. You can look at it like we just explained of what the Zohar HaKadosh says. Every hardship is preparation for chesed. Every time of judgment is a vessel to receive more gifts. Oh, Yetzer Hara comes, it says, look at you. You lost all your money. You look at you. You're falling down from the wealth you had. Look at the state of which your life is standing in right now. Before you were able to afford certain things, and now you're not able to afford certain things. So instead of looking at that period of time as a period, Yetzer Hara somehow convinces us that this is going to be the rest of our life this way. And as a result of that, what? We fall to like a form of like idol worship. Now why idol worship I mention? Because Zohar HaKadosh says, anything that is false, and that we follow it like it's Hashem's act in the world, that's idol worship. Anything that is not true, that man sees favor within it, is idol worship. Because whatever Hashem's not, and you're walking after, that's idol worship. In what sense? In the sense that, like we just explained, judgment doesn't exist from Hashem. That there's no such thing that Hashem's giving bad just for the sake of bad. Bad always is a preparation for good. And chas v'shalom, If we listen to Yetzer Hara and we say this bad is just bad because it's whatever it is, it's just the way that my life is right now, that's the essence of idol worship. And this really explains a big question I had for years about. It says that Kol HaKoes Ki'ilu Oved Avodah Zarah. What's the translation of that? Anyone that's upset, that's angry, it's like he does idol worship. I always said, why idol worship? Say whoever's upset, he's falling on the sin of emunah. Okay, fine. Whoever's upset is not happy. Makes sense. Whoever's upset is not grateful. Makes sense. But why idol worship? What's this idea of being avodah zarah? Why are you calling it idol worship? Why don't you just call it something else? Why is being upset such a bad thing? And the answer is very simple. Anger, like what we just mentioned before, is a state of Yetzer Hara convincing us that a small negative second of our life somehow became our entire life. I'll give you an example. Husband and wife. There's some sort of argument. What happens if Chas v'Shalom he gets upset? In simpler words, he took all the good that his wife did to him, took all the amazing moments that they had, took all the best things that she's done, and he summed it up by what? By saying she is this one small act in which enraged the person. Or in simpler words, taking a simple act, a simple second of our life, and being able to convince that that's the state of our life. That's where you live in your world. In its essence, that is what idol worship is. It's taking a false thought of the evil inclination and allowing him to convince us that even a moment of negative between us and one another, between a man and his husband, between a man and Hashem, between a man and his world, and saying that's our life, that's the world, all negative. That in its essence is idol worship. And now you can see that as a result of all that fear that Hashem installed within the world, Bnei Israel ended up actually doing what? Idol worship. They built not only an idol, but they built a shor, a golden calf, which calf is bull, which is like a cow. In its essence, according to, if you were to call it like the mazalot, shor is judgment, a bull is like din, strength of the left hand, and even they made it out of gold. Which gold, in every single teaching, is not a material of kindness, but rather a material of what? Of judgment. It's red. It's very similar to that other color that we mentioned, red. So Bnei Israel didn't just create an idol. They truly understood and truly followed the advice of the evil inclination, that those moments of judgment in the world is the state of the world. And if we live in a world of judgment, what better leader should we have than a leader of what? Of judgment. A bull which represents judgment, and what? And the gold which represents judgment as well. So in reality, Rabotai, we see that we fall to Yetzer Hara in a way that we didn't even think that it's Yetzer Hara. It could be applicable in Parnasa, like we just gave an example a few moments ago. But it can also exist between Shidduchim. There's so many young boys and girls that come to us and say, you know, Rav, I was in a relationship for 1 year and it ended. And she is sure that she will never get married, she says. I said, Chas v'Shalom, where did you bring that from? And she says, because if I was not with him, it could never be. Why would Hashem do that? And we're looking at them and we're saying, why don't you look at this story, this act that occurred in your life, and say, look, this person was not good enough for me, or not good for me. So what did Hashem do? He pulled him out of my life to bring something what? To bring something better. Something that is so obvious. Why did you take it to such a negative way? And it makes sense. Yetzer whispered in her ear and said, look, now you are alone. That is your life. Zero. And the same thing for men. Now that you're no longer with this person, that is the state of your entire life. 120 years, that's how you will be. Chas v'Shalom. It's foolishness. It's simple Yetzer Hara pulling us down a path that we know that he's going to take those same moves and steps, but still he makes us fall. The same thing could be with our happiness. Sometimes people have a sad day. Okay, have a sad day. So what? They think, today I had a sad day. It means that my life is sadness and I'm depressed. So now he became depressed from having a moment of sadness, having a moment of hardship. Abotai, this is applicable in every single aspect of our life. Hardships should not be seen as the lie that the evil teaches us as change of our life, but rather hardships are always preparation for something much better. And if we fall to Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, and we let him convince us that that is the state of our life, you know what the Zohar Kadosh says? It says, that's what you create of your life. And we can give an example. It's like a person that's crossing a bridge. And he's standing on the bridge. And he's saying, okay, the bridge is about to fall. So I'm not going to move. You're not going to move. Eventually the bridge will fall. Wherever you stop at your journey, that's the reality that you're going to find yourself with. Within our life, in order to get to gifts, we have to pass that layer of judgment. And if we don't pass those layer of judgment, we're stuck where? In the judgment itself. So when we judge our lives, we have to be extremely careful. Because what we don't realize, that when Yetzer Hara convinces us and tells us, this is the state of your life, we actually make the state of our life stay there. Instead of moving forward, instead of passing it. We have to remember that judgment is not from Hashem. Only kindness is from Hashem. But even kindness needs a preparation, and kindness needs a vessel that will be able for us to hold it and keep it for many years to come. And if we hold that way of thought, and we don't let Yetzer Hara convince us otherwise, every time of judgment or hardship will come, and as fast as it came, it will do what? It will go. But when it will go, Bezrat Hashem, we will not only just pass it, but we will get to the place and to the gift of what? Of the chesed that was always waiting for us. But if we chas v'shalom hold and say, this is my life, thank you Hashem, this time of judgment is my reality, you just made it your reality, chas v'shalom. If you made it your reality, you stopped in the middle of the bridge, then that's what exists, that's what's left in your hands. Shavuot, in its essence, was always this chag that was here to teach us that before every gift, we must understand that there must be a border of judgment. And without that border of judgment, no gift could ever be obtained. And that makes perfect sense. Why? Because there's a few things that we do on Shavuot that we never really give an explanation for. An explanation that's meaningful and matters. And maybe with this line it can make sense. On Shavuot we read Megillat Ruth. What's Megillat Ruth? I'm not going to say the story because it's a long one. But the story of Megillat Ruth was two sisters that married two brothers that had a mother-in-law that named Naomi. The two brothers passed away. The father-in-law passed away. That family went to a very, very hard time. And Ruth and Naomi decided that she wanted to go to Eretz Israel. She wanted to go to Eretz Israel to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And she wanted to build a life surrounded by Torah and Mitzvot. Chazal say that Ruth and her sister, Boaz, said to Naomi, let's come with you. Our husbands passed away, which they were your sons. Let's travel with you. We're not leaving your side. Naomi realized that she has no more wealth, no more husband. How is she going to provide for her two daughter-in-laws? So she looked at the two daughter-in-laws and she told them, go. The road that I'm taking is a hard one. I won't be able to give you the gifts that your father did. So go back to your father, live in his home, have him provide for you because I can't. It says Puah got up, said, I'm not taking this path. Seems like a hard one, I'm going home. She went back to her father. Ruth said, I'm not leaving your side. No matter how hard the path will be, I know standing side by side with you, I am in the right path. In reality, Ruth overcame that hard period of her life, got married, and her grandson came out to be who?
King David.
David HaMelech. What's incredible is that David's very, very far cousin was who? Was the great-grandson of who? Of Ruth's sister. Which was who? Goliath.
Goliath.
That even Goliath, the story of Goliath and David, they were cousins. One chose the path that started off in honey and ended off with poison, and one started the path that started off with a hard journey and ended up with what? Ended up with the greatest gift that can possibly be. Now this even makes sense of why David is so much associated with Shavuot. David was born, they thought he was a bastard, a mamzer. They kicked him out. They didn't look at him. He was small. No one thought he would be anything special. But David, he knew something that nobody else knew. He knew that even the harder that the path will be, it just is an indication of the bigger the gift that he will receive in the end of that hard road. He understood that no judgment lasts forever. He understood that no hardship lasts forever. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu was putting in front of him big gates of judgment, it means what he's protecting behind those gates is something so much sweeter than anybody else was able to achieve. And he did it. Became King David, conquered half the world. And even after he conquered half the world, his entire books of praises, which we call the Tehillim, 95% of it doesn't even talk of him praising Hashem when he was wealthy. Doesn't talk when he was praising Hashem when he was king. Doesn't talk when he was praising Hashem at good times, but rather when? It's all the prayer that he wrote when he was praising Hashem, when he was going through hard times. Remembering that the hard times are the preparation for the biggest gifts. We see that in another place of Shavuot, that we call Shavuot a wedding. Preparation. Where many customs even read a ketubah between Hashem and Bnei Israel. So we thought, what's a wedding have to do with Shavuot? And the answer is very simple. A wedding, when you want to prepare for it, you find that from the beginning of when she said yes to get engaged, until the second after the chuppah, it's all chaos. This family member doesn't like this family member. Preparing the wedding is a disaster. Everything seems to be like din. Everything seems to be like judgment. Everything is hard. Nothing is just simple. I hope for many people it's simple, but most people that we speak to don't have that experience. So that whole path is judgment. But you realize in the end, if you reach to the end, and you got to the chuppah, and you broke the cup, only then all the love that you had for that individual gets awakened. Because you realize that all that judgment was for what? It was to get to this moment. So all that deen and all that hardship that he needed to pass, it wasn't deen of judgment of how a person's marriage will be, but rather a preparation of building something that is much better. A preparation of coming to a place of something that is much greater. We even say that about a woman that brings a child. We say that a woman that brings a child, after every kid she has to atarat nidarim. What's atarat nidarim? Breaking of swears. Because the moment when she has the kid, just the suffering that comes to mind, it's that she swears she'll never bring a kid again. She knows that if she doesn't, it's halakha, you have to atarat nidarim. Because she's guaranteed to swear. But in reality of all this, we understand that only when you pass that like a threshold of judgment and din, you find that what the gift is so sweet. And without that threshold of judgment and din, there is no sweetness that comes in the end. Maybe we can say that that's why we eat milk on Shavuot. You know, there's always a question. Many people ask why we do cheesecake and cheese on Shavuot, and all the other chagim we don't do. So there's so many explanations, because Hashem is white, and the light is bright, and the cheese is white too, and all these. I don't know how this comes to this place, but based off this thought, we can understand perfectly. Blood is a liquid. I mean, milk is a liquid, right? Comes from the animal, right? That liquid, before it became milk, what did it start off as? Blood. That's what it says in the Gemara. That's what at least a few people that we've spoken with that are in the medical can agree to. That even milk, something that seems so white and so sweet, starts off as what? Blood. As red blood. Or in other words, chesed being white and judgment being what? Red. So it always starts off as blood, red, gvura, din, and ends up where? Ends up as what? Chesed. As chesed. Ends up as goodness. Ends as something that is so positive, ends at something that is so sweet. In our life, we have to understand and we have to remember that every single time of hardship is just an indication that there is an opportunity of receiving something much greater. And if we seize that opportunity and we understand that in this opportunity, in this hardship, there is a place where we can achieve something bigger and better than what we have right now, only then we allow those doors to be opened towards us. And this is, Abotai, something that you could even see in our own world. Baruch Hashem, in Los Angeles, there are many very wealthy people we know. A lot of the young wealthy people have one thing in common. They all got wealthy in 2007. And we're curious to understand, why is that? And the answer that at least they tell us is that they said when the world was in a time of chaos, we understood that the chaos will not last forever. So while everything's at chaos, they acted, they moved, they pushed forward to pass that period. But when they passed that period, they ended up with what? With so much more than they had in the beginning. We have to understand that now that we are before Shavuot, that represents this idea of overcoming judgment to receive a gift, especially at the year of Shemitah, that Shemitah shares this exact character as well, of overcoming a judgment to reach to a place of kindness. We have to understand that every hardship that we go through, and every challenge that we are challenged, and every obstacle that we have to overcome, are all opportunities for big brachot that we can all obtain. The secret is looking at them and understanding that they are an opportunity of big bracha, and not seeing them what Yetzirah wants us to see them as, an entity, a period, a reality of just pure negative and judgment. So Bezrat Hashem, in the merit of all the tzaddikim, we all come to a place of taking all our challenges and all our hardships and all the hard things that we go through, and Bezrat Hashem overcome it, in order that we will all achieve the biggest brachot and the biggest gifts that we can.